At my 8-year-old's $2,500 birthday party, my sister-in-law told her, "You can't eat any of the food. Ask your mom for a plate." All the other kids were served a huge menu of cakes and sweets. I didn't shout. I got up and announced this. The whole room fell dead silent. My daughter Lily had been excited about her birthday for weeks, and honestly, I wanted the day to be simple. Just family, friends, and some cake. But nothing is ever simple when my sister-in-law, Brittany, gets involved. She insisted on planning every detail and charged me $2,500 for catering alone. I told myself it wasn't worth a fight. I told myself Lily deserved a nice day, and I ignored the knot in my stomach. When the food arrived, all the kids rushed toward the tables. Lily ran ahead of me, smiling, pointing at everything. She loves birthdays. She loves sweets. She loves being included. Most of all, she loves feeling normal. I was walking toward her when I heard her ask, "Does this have nuts?" My whole body stopped. That one word, nuts, changed the tone of the room for me. I turned and saw her standing by the dessert table, holding a plate she hadn't filled yet, looking confused. A child next to her shrugged. Lily looked around for help. "Aunt Brittany," she said, "can I have this one?" Brittany didn't even turn around. She was standing behind the table, moving plates around like she was arranging a display at a store. "Can I have this?" Lily tried again. Without looking up, Brittany said loud and clear, "You can't eat any of the food. Ask your mom for a plate." Lily froze. Just froze. A few kids around her stared too. One already had chocolate on his face. Lily looked at their plates, then at her empty one, then at me. "Mom?" she asked softly. "Did you bring my plate?" Not crying, not whining, just confused and embarrassed. I walked straight over. "What plate?" Lily pointed back at Brittany. "She said I can't eat anything and that you were supposed to bring my food." I looked at Brittany. "Why would you tell her that?" She finally turned around and sighed like I was the problem. "Jessica, she has a nut allergy. I assumed you brought her a safe meal." "You assumed?" "Well, yes," she said, folding her arms. "It's not fair for every other child to miss out because of one allergy, so of course I let them have the good stuff. You should have brought her plate. That's your job." Behind me, kids were already biting into things covered in chopped nuts. Lily watched them quietly, trying not to look disappointed. Paige, her older sister, slipped an arm around her, protective and tense. "Show me the menu," I said. Brittany rolled her eyes. "Jessica, don't be dramatic." But she handed me the catering sheet anyway. I scanned it. Every dessert had nuts, almonds, pistachios, hazelnuts, cashews. It didn't matter what I looked at. Everything had some type of nut. Even the fruit bowls had nut toppings. Safe options existed. She simply didn't order any. Lily's eyes moved from treat to treat, watching other children enjoy everything she couldn't touch. She looked down at her empty hands. The hurt on her face was quiet, but sharp enough to split me open. Behind me, Brittany kept talking. "You always make things bigger than they are. She can just eat later. She doesn't need to make this about her." Then her mother, Sherry, chimed in. "It's not dangerous if she doesn't eat it, Jessica." And her father, Richard, added, "You're ruining the party. Brittany worked very hard on this." I didn't raise my voice. I didn't let myself crack. But inside, something cold settled into place. I stepped onto a chair. "Everyone," I said. The word carried through the room like someone hit a switch. Conversation stopped. Kids froze. Adults looked up. "The food Brittany ordered is not safe for Lily." Silence spread like a wave. "So, we're removing all of it." A few kids gasped. One set his plate down slowly. Lily looked up at me with wide eyes. "I'll be ordering safe food now," I continued. It'll take a little time, so the children can go outside to play while we wait. A parent whispered, "All of it?" "Yes," I said. "All of it." I looked right at Brittany. She looked stunned, then offended, then furious. "If anyone disagrees," I added calmly, "you are free to take your plate and step outside. But this food cannot stay in here with my daughter. No yelling, no theatrics, just a simple fact." My husband Michael moved beside me then, quietly but firmly standing with me. He didn't say a word, but the look on his face was new, a line drawn finally. For a full 5 seconds, no one breathed. Not really. It was a silence with weight. Sherry's mouth hung open like she was trying to speak and couldn't find the words. Richard looked like someone had unplugged him. And Brittany? She stood there gripping the edge of the table, staring at me like she didn't recognize who I was, as if she couldn't believe I was choosing my daughter over her. But Lily? She looked at me like the world had tilted back into place. That silence told me everything. They knew exactly what Brittany had done, and they knew this wasn't over. If you've ever ignored your own instincts because you didn't want to cause drama, let me tell you a secret I learned the hard way. Drama is coming anyway. It just arrives later, louder, and usually when there's cake nearby. I didn't always understand how Brittany became the center of Michael's family universe. I didn't grow up with her, so I didn't witness the early years of her reign. I only got the highlights after I married into the family, usually through uncomfortable dinners where my in-laws would retell old stories with the same proud tone people normally use for surgeons or war heroes. Apparently, Brittany learned to walk early, talk early, dance early, charm teachers early, and ruin lives professionally by the age of 32. Michael existed somewhere around the edges of the family photo album, smiling politely with the body language of someone who'd accepted second place long ago. He tried to warn me early in our relationship. "She's intense," Michael said once, after Brittany hijacked our anniversary dinner by announcing she was writing a book on elevated event styling and insisting we brainstorm chapter titles between courses. "Intense?" I asked. "Like a personal trainer?" "Intense like a small tornado," he said. "But she means well." Right. By the time we had Paige and Lily, now 11 and 8, I'd collected plenty of field data. When I say Brittany was the favorite, I don't mean by an inch. I mean by a full marathon. Every conversation with Sherry and Richard began with Brittany, circled around Brittany, and ended with Brittany's children, Haley and Carter, who apparently could do no wrong. Meanwhile, Paige and Lily were the nice girls, which in their vocabulary meant, don't ask for anything. Family gatherings had a pattern. Haley and Carter were given first pick of everything: gifts, treats, games, attention. While my girls were gently told, let them go first, they're younger. Even if technically they weren't younger, or smaller, or being reasonable human beings. Once, Paige tried to show Richard a drawing she spent hours on. He glanced at it for half a second, said, "That's nice," and then turned to watch Haley demonstrate her special dance, which was just her waving her arms like a damp towel. He applauded like she'd cured a disease. Michael always tensed up during these moments. He'd stay quiet, stiff, like he was watching an old wound reopen. Later, alone in the car, he'd say things like, "They mean well," or "It's not worth the fight," or "I don't want to upset them." He'd learned to shrink himself to avoid conflict. I didn't know yet how deep that training ran. Then came college. Or, more accurately, Brittany's college. When Michael turned 18, Sherry and Richard told him they couldn't afford to help him with tuition. He got a job. He applied for scholarships. He took loans. He made it work because he always made things work. But when Brittany graduated high school 4 years later, there was suddenly money. Plenty of it. "We want her to focus on her studies," they said. "She has so much potential." Michael didn't say a word, not one. He just sat there with his jaw tight while they explained that it would mean a lot if he could contribute too. And of course he did, because that's who he was, because he felt guilty saying no, because that family trained him to feel responsible for Brittany's comfort. By the time I married him, he was still sending them money, quietly, regular amounts. Sherry called it helping the family. It was really funding the favorite child's lifestyle. And yes, that included Brittany's kids later too. Birthday gifts, sports fees, random emergencies. There was always something. I didn't complain. I didn't push. I didn't want to create rifts. But it bothered me. The way they leaned on him financially while pretending he should be grateful for their attention. The way they acted like his success belonged to them, but his needs were an inconvenience. Then Lily developed her allergy. It didn't happen slowly or gently. One afternoon, she took a bite of a cookie at a friend's house. She didn't know. We didn't know. The friend's mom didn't know. 10 minutes later, she was gasping for breath, her lips swelling, her skin blotchy and hot, and I was running out the door with her in my arms, Paige crying behind me, and Michael speeding us to the hospital so fast my vision blurred. I will never forget the sound she made in the back seat. I still wake up some nights thinking I hear it. She lived, but barely. And everything changed after that. No nuts in the house. No nuts at restaurants. No nuts anywhere near her. Paige turned into her personal guard dog, checking labels, watching hands, hovering like a tiny bodyguard with stickers and sanitizer. And the whole family knew, because we told them, more than once, because we needed them to know. But some people take information and file it away. Others take it and pretend it's an opinion. Sherry acted like we were overreacting. Richard thought it was just a kid thing. And Brittany, of course, believed it was an inconvenience. When Brittany announced her new party planning business, she immediately inserted herself into Lily's birthday like it was her first big client. "I'll handle everything," she said, already making decisions before we agreed. Michael tried to push back, but Brittany steamrolled right over him. She always did. "It'll be good exposure," she told me, pretending to offer help while taking control. And just like that, we were locked in. I was paying for things I didn't want, and Michael was shrinking into old habits that his family had trained into him. I told myself it was fine. Just a children's party. Nothing serious, but something in my gut knew better. And I didn't realize how right I was until the moment everything collapsed. Because Lily's birthday wasn't going to be a celebration. It was going to be the moment the whole truth finally snapped open. There's a certain type of silence that feels like the moment before a glass shatters. That's what filled the room after my announcement. Kids froze mid-bite. Parents looked around like someone had pulled a fire alarm. Lily pressed herself into my side. Paige stepped closer, already in protective mode. And then, of course, Brittany snapped first. "You're ruining your own kid's party," she said, voice high and shaking. This is mania, Jessica. Everything was fine." "Fine. Sure, if you ignored the nuts covering half the room." She kept talking, waving her arms like a malfunctioning windmill. "You can't expect nobody to eat something just because she can't. She doesn't have to eat it. You never told me to order anything special. I just assumed. We can order something for her. We don't need to take everything away." Her words came out in frantic bursts, like she was trying to grab control back with sheer volume. Before I replied, Sherry moved in, dragging Richard with her like backup singers in a bad musical. "Our daughter worked day and night on this party," Sherry said, voice rising. "She picked every detail. She planned everything. She did this for Lily, and you're standing here treating her horribly." Michael stood up. He stood so suddenly the room actually gasped. I gasped. I didn't even know he could move that fast. Michael never stands up in conflict. He fades. He disappears. He becomes part of the furniture. But now he was standing between me and his family, shoulders squared, jaw set, looking like someone I didn't recognize. And then he said the words no one expected. "You need to leave." Just like that. No build-up, no emotion, just a clean, sharp command that sliced right through the room. "What?" Sherry whispered. Michael didn't blink. "All three of you, leave." You could feel the shock hit Brittany like a physical slap. She wasn't used to being told no, let alone get out. "Michael," she said, laughing nervously, "don't do this. She's being dramatic." "You put Lily at risk," he said. He didn't raise his voice, but the entire room felt it. Richard tried to jump in. "Nobody put her at risk. She could have died," Michael said, louder now. "And you're defending it." That shut Richard up. Completely. Sherry's eyes went wide. "We didn't do anything wrong." Michael turned toward her. "No, you all stood here arguing about food while she was scared and confused." He pointed toward Lily, who was clinging to Paige's sleeve. "You're not going to do that to her." Brittany swallowed hard. "You're choosing her over your own family?" Michael didn't flinch. "I'm choosing my daughter." He didn't add anything else. He didn't need to. That sentence alone ended the entire argument. For a second, no one breathed. Then Brittany scoffed sharply, grabbed Haley and Carter, and stormed toward the door. Sherry and Richard followed, still glaring back at Michael as if hoping he'd backpedal. He didn't. They walked out into the hallway, and the door slammed shut behind them. The moment it closed, it felt like the air finally moved again. I knelt beside Lily. She tugged on my arm with trembling fingers. "Mom, did I do something wrong?" I shook my head. "No, sweetheart, not at all." Paige wrapped her arms around her sister from behind, whispering something soft I couldn't hear. Across the room, one of the parents, the kind, quiet type, stood up and said, "Kids, who wants to play outside for a bit?" And just like that, the frozen moment cracked. They scattered toward the yard, relieved to escape the tension. I ordered the replacement food as soon as the kids were outside. It took a while to arrive, long enough for us to breathe, but not long enough for anyone to leave. People helped set it out without being asked. There were small, sympathetic smiles, tiny squeezes on my arm, that silent parent-to-parent understanding. Michael stayed beside me. He didn't speak. He was still breathing like someone who had just run uphill. I looked at him, this man who had spent his entire life shrinking himself around his family, the man who always tried to keep the peace, even when it suffocated him. And now he'd done the one thing nobody ever believed he would do. He stood up. He chose his daughter. He chose us. Lily came back inside, running straight into Michael's arms. He lifted her without thinking, held her tight, buried his face in her hair like he was rebooting from the inside out. Outside, the kids were laughing again. Parents were chatting quietly. Paige was bringing Lily a safe cupcake with sprinkles. And inside me, something settled. Not peace exactly, more like certainty, because once Michael said those words, "You need to leave," there was no going back. The party was still happening around us, kids playing, food arriving, people adjusting. But the real story? It had only just begun. The house felt too quiet when we walked in that evening. Not peaceful. Quiet in the way hospitals get quiet. Controlled, tense, waiting. The girls went straight to their rooms in that post-party exhaustion only sugar crashes can create. Lily was smiling, though. That mattered. She'd eaten her safe food, played with friends, laughed with Paige. Whatever storm happened around her, she still walked out with a birthday. Michael and I stood in the hallway like we didn't know where to put our bodies. He kept rubbing the back of his neck. I kept pacing because standing still makes me feel like I'm drowning. I finally said it. That was insane. He didn't answer, not with words. He just walked into his office, opened his laptop, and his whole posture changed. Not frantic, not emotional, focused. He clicked into his banking apps like someone logging into a demolition control panel. "What are you doing?" I asked, stepping behind him. He didn't look up. "Finishing what I started." 4 taps later, his parents' monthly transfer was gone. 3 more, and the emergency credit line he'd opened for them years ago was canceled. He deleted scheduled payments, standing orders, every financial tie his family had knotted around him. It all happened in under 2 minutes. No hesitation, no regret, no dramatic declarations. Just click, click, click. Centuries of family obligation erased. Watching him do it was like watching someone finally cut a rope from around their own throat. And then, in the middle of the silence, he said, "I'm done." 2 words. Quiet. Final. Terrifying in their certainty, before I could respond, he picked up his phone, typed one single message in the family group chat, and hit send. "Paige and Lily will not be attending any future events. We're protecting our daughters. Please don't contact us again." That was it. No explanation, no apology, no invitation for debate. Michael, professional peacekeeper, just nuked the bridge in one line. I sat down at the edge of the couch, watching him like he had grown new bones. He didn't sit with me, didn't need to. He just reached over, rested his hand on my shoulder for half a second, the smallest anchor, and then got up again. "Jessica," he said. "Yeah?" "Cancel the catering payment." It wasn't a question. Oh. I liked this version of my husband. Brittany had billed me through her event planning startup. She had even added a little sparkle emoji next to her business name when she sent the invoice. My bank app pulled it right up. $2,500. Brittany Events LLC. I clicked dispute and typed, "Unsafe food provided. Child with known allergy endangered. Service unusable." Sent. Done. It took 14 seconds. Somewhere in the distance, I swear the universe leaned back and whispered, "Uh-oh." Because Brittany noticed fast. 10 minutes later, my phone lit up with her name. Then again, and again. Then her texts started coming in like machine gun fire. "What did you do? You canceled the payment? That was my money. I already spent it. You're robbing me." "Jessica, answer me right now." I did not answer. I turned the phone face down on the couch and stared at the ceiling. "This is going to get loud," I said. Michael nodded once. "Let it." It got loud faster than I expected. Someone sent me a screenshot 5 minutes later. Brittany had posted on her Facebook business page, then on her regular page, then in a neighborhood group, then in the extended family chat. She was everywhere at once. "I was robbed today. My own sister-in-law refused to pay for a full-service party I planned for months. I spent money I didn't have, and now she stole it from me." The comments were rolling in. Some were supportive, because there is always at least one person dumb enough to swallow anything with a sob story attached. But then the real comments started. "Wait, weren't you the one who served unsafe food to a child? If you can't follow an allergy list, maybe this business isn't for you. She was right to cancel. Honestly, you should be paying them. Why did you serve nuts at a party with kids?" One woman even wrote, "Your services are dangerous. Shut this down before someone gets hurt." And then someone else wrote, "Never hiring you. Ever." Brittany's replies were unhinged. "It wasn't my fault. She should have brought a plate. She's teaching her kid to be selfish. None of that food was for her. I did nothing wrong." Watching it unfold was like watching someone try to put out a fire with gasoline. I might have enjoyed it a little too much, but the hit came when I checked her business page again an hour later. 1-star reviews were already appearing, not from the party guests, just from people reading her meltdown. The internet moved faster than guilt. At 9:13 p.m., she posted a final message. "I'm closing my business. Happy now?" Yes, I was. Just when I was about to breathe again, my phone started ringing. Sherry. Of course. Then Richard. Then Brittany. Then the three of them in a group call named Family Emergency. We ignored all of them. Michael slid his phone into a drawer like someone putting away a loaded weapon. But they weren't done. Because the next morning, they realized something. The money was gone. All of it. Every monthly payment. Every emergency transfer. Every quiet loan. Years of support they never once said thank you for. The screaming started early. Michael's phone lit up with, "Where is the money? The bank is wrong. Fix this, bring back the payments." "Now you owe us, Michael. Pick up the phone," he replied once. Just once. "No mistake." Silence. Short-lived silence. Because at 11:47 a.m., our doorbell rang. I opened the door slowly. There they were. Sherry, Richard, and Brittany, looking like someone had shoved her into a blender and hit pulse. Sherry started before I even said hello. "You will fix this." Richard. "We relied on that support." Brittany. "I spent that money. Do you know what you did to me?" Michael stepped beside me, and for the second time in 24 hours, he shocked them speechless. "We're done," he said. "No," Sherry snapped. "You don't get to be done. You exploited me for years." She shut up. Richard blinked rapidly. "We never—" "You took money from me every month and acted like it was owed." Brittany's voice cracked. "You stole from me." "You endangered my daughter," he said. "Then you defended it." They all stopped talking. He kept going. "You lied about Jessica. You attacked her. You humiliated her. You tried to blame her for protecting Lily." Sherry swallowed hard. "Michael?" "You're not safe for my kids," he said, "and I will not let you near them again." Her mouth dropped open. "This is the line," he said softly. "And you crossed it." No shouting. Just truth. Brittany stepped forward. "You can't do this." Michael shook his head. "Leave." That one word hit them harder than anything else. They glared. They sputtered. But they left. The door shut behind them with a final, echoing click. Michael leaned against the wall for a moment, palms pressed to it like he needed to steady the world. I walked to him, put a hand on his back. "We're free," I said. He exhaled, long, shaking, like he'd been holding that breath for a lifetime. And as I stared at the closed door, at the silence filling our home, at the space where their voices no longer lived, I realized something. They didn't just lose access to us. They lost control. They lost their power. And they lost the one person who had always said yes to them. Michael finally said no. And this time, it meant forever. So, what do you think? Did we go too far? Or not far enough? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more. During our family vacation, my 14-year-old daughter collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. My parents and my sister posted, "Finally having peace without the pathetic drama queen." I didn't shout. I took action. When they returned home, they found this on their kitchen table and started screaming. Sounds like the setup for a bad soap opera, right? Unfortunately, it was just another Tuesday with my family. If you've ever wondered what it's like to go on holiday with people who treat cruelty like a team sport, buckle up. We do these family trips every year. Tradition, my parents call it. Personally, I call it masochism, but my daughter was excited about this one. It was somewhere she'd been begging to go for ages. She was practically counting down the days, and even though I dreaded the circus, I gave in. That's the thing about being a single mom. Sometimes you put yourself in the lion's den just to give your kid a happy memory. So there we were. Me, my daughter, my parents, my sister, her husband, and their 2 kids. Sounds wholesome. But wholesome ends at the brochure. Behind the smiles, it's every man for himself, with my parents acting like referees who've already picked their favorite team. Spoiler, it's never mine. Day 1, breakfast, and my daughter says her stomach hurts. Nothing dramatic, just a quiet, "Mom, my belly doesn't feel right." Before I can answer, my mother swoops in. "Oh, please, don't start with the drama already. We just got here." My sister snorts. She's probably just trying to get out of walking. Lazy, like always. And the cousins, smelling blood, chime in like a Greek chorus. "Drama queen! Drama queen!" It's like they were waiting for it, honestly. One tiny weakness, and suddenly it's family game night. I tried to comfort her, but I admit, part of me wanted to believe it was nothing. Easier to shrug it off than start a fight with my parents before noon on day 1. By midday, the pain was worse. She was pale, holding her stomach, walking slowly behind the group. "Don't milk it," my dad barked when she asked to sit down for a minute. "She's always been like this," my mom muttered, making sure I heard. "She'll make a scene out of nothing." My sister rolled her eyes so hard I thought they'd get stuck. Meanwhile, my daughter stayed quiet. She hates attention, which is ironic because they all think she lives for it. She tried to keep up, probably desperate not to be mocked again. That broke me a little, watching her try to minimize her pain so these people wouldn't laugh at her. That's what this family does, turn suffering into entertainment. By dinner, she was barely eating. She sat with tears in her eyes, while everyone else clinked glasses and laughed. My sister leaned into her husband and whispered something, and both their kids snickered at my daughter. I asked what was so funny. They smirked. "Nothing." "Right. Nothing." And then it happened. She stood up, maybe to go to the bathroom, and just folded, like a puppet with its strings cut. One moment she was upright, the next she was on the floor, clutching her stomach and gasping in pain. For a split second, the table went quiet. Then my mom broke the silence. "Oh, for heaven's sake!" Like my kid collapsing was just her pulling another stunt. I lost it. I grabbed my daughter, yelled for help, and we got her rushed to the hospital. That night was a blur. White walls, harsh lights, doctors asking questions, nurses moving quickly. My daughter curled on the bed, in agony. Me sitting there, trying not to cry. I didn't know what was happening. Appendicitis, food poisoning, something worse? My brain went to dark places. All I knew was my baby was in pain, and I couldn't fix it. I texted my family to let them know we were at the hospital. No reply. Hours crawled by, test after test. Me pacing, holding her hand, telling her it would be okay even though I didn't know that. At some point, desperate for distraction, I checked my phone. And that's when I saw it. A photo, posted an hour earlier. My parents, my sister, and the cousins, grinning by the pool, cocktails in hand. The caption, "Finally having peace without the pathetic drama queen." I froze. My daughter was in a hospital bed, crying out in pain, and they were out there celebrating, posting selfies, mocking her, mocking us. I stared at that picture until my hands shook. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone across the room, to march back to that hotel and drag them all here to see what drama really looked like. But I didn't, because in that moment, something inside me snapped. The years of being dismissed, of being told I was the disappointment, of watching them play favorites and belittle me, and now my daughter. It all came into focus, and I knew. This was it. The line. They'd crossed it, and there was no going back. I sat there, beside my daughter's hospital bed, while the people who should have cared most were clinking glasses without us. And instead of shouting, I made a decision. They weren't going to get away with it. If you want to understand why my parents could sit by a pool and toast cocktails while my daughter was in a hospital bed, you have to rewind. I didn't just happen into a toxic family. I was raised in one like a lab experiment. From day one, it was obvious who the favorite was. My sister. 2 years older, perfect on paper, perfect in their eyes. The golden child who sparkled when she sneezed. And me? I was the control group. The disappointment. They never said those words out loud. You're the disappointment. But they didn't have to. It was in the way my mother's voice tightened every time I opened my mouth. The way my father sighed when I tried something and didn't excel. The way teachers would compare me to my sister and my parents would just nod like, yes, exactly. Why can't she be like that? Imagine growing up with a mirror that only shows you what you're not. That was my childhood. When I was little, I tried. God, did I try. I studied harder, I dressed neater, I even practiced smiling in the mirror because my sister's smile seemed to get her everything. I thought if I could just mimic it, maybe I'd get a fraction of what she got. Spoiler, I didn't. Instead, the more I tried, the more obvious it became that I wasn't her, and in my family, not her was the same as failure. It's funny, kids believe what you feed them. I grew up swallowing disappointment 3 meals a day until I thought it was part of my DNA. If my parents had handed me a certificate that said certified failure, I would have framed it. By the time I hit my teens, that sense of worthlessness had calcified. So when I fell for a boy who treated me like trash, of course I did. He wasn't good for me, but at least he noticed me. At least when he looked at me, I wasn't invisible. That was enough. Until it wasn't. I got pregnant. Young. Too young for them, even though my sister was the same age when she married her high school sweetheart. The difference? She had a ring. I didn't. When I told my parents, my mother's face looked like she'd bitten into a lemon. My father didn't even look at me, just muttered, "Figures." My sister, queen of empathy, smirked and said, "Well, at least now you've got a purpose." I thought being pregnant might make me important. Instead, it just made me their cautionary tale. The baby's father was a toxic mirror of my parents, manipulative, cruel, impossible to please. I guess we gravitate toward what we know. That lasted about 5 minutes before it imploded, and when he was gone, I was relieved. Terrified, but relieved. And for the first time in my life, I felt something like pride. Not in myself, but in her, my daughter. She was tiny and helpless and needed me, and that meant I mattered, even if only to her. Of course, my parents weaponized that too. Single mother. Shameful. She won't amount to anything. My sister looked at me like I was a walking reminder of what not to be, but here's the kicker. The house we lived in, it wasn't theirs. It was my grandmother's. My grandmother was the only person in that family who ever looked at me and saw me. Not the failed copy of my sister. Not the disappointment. Just me. She was older by then, fragile, but sharp. I helped her around the house, took care of her, and she loved my baby with a fierceness I had never seen before. The way she'd cradle her, whisper to her, beam at her like she was sunlight itself. I used to watch them together and feel this ache in my chest, like, so this is what love is supposed to look like. Then my grandmother died, and everything tilted. Everyone assumed the house would go to my mother. After all, she was the daughter. My father used to talk about our home like the deed already had their names on it. My sister started redecorating in her head before the will was even read, but my grandmother wasn't stupid. She saw them, she knew them, and maybe she knew that if she left the house to her daughter, I would never escape the cycle. So she did something my parents never forgave her for. She left the house to my baby. Not me. My baby. In trust, with me as guardian until she came of age. When I first found out, I thought it had to be a mistake. Who leaves property to a toddler? But then I remembered the way my grandmother had looked at my daughter. Like she was worth protecting. Like she deserved better than the circus we lived in. And suddenly, it made perfect sense. My parents? They lost their minds. My mother wailed about betrayal. My father said my grandmother had been confused at the end. My sister whispered about culture and tradition, how the house should naturally pass to the adult daughter, not a child. They stormed around like the victims, while I sat there with a toddler on my lap and a piece of paper in my hands that said, legally, this house wasn't theirs. It was hers, my daughter's. But here's the thing. When you've spent your whole life being told you're worthless, you don't wake up the next morning suddenly full of power. I didn't kick them out. I didn't throw the deed in their faces. I did what I'd always done. I kept my head down. I told myself, it's just a formality. It's still their house. Don't rock the boat. So we stayed. My parents continued to treat it as theirs. They filled the rooms with their rules, their voices, their judgment. I raised my daughter in the same house where I had been raised as a disappointment, hoping maybe things would be different this time. They weren't. Every time my mother scolded me, every time my father sighed, every time my sister visited with her perfect life and her perfect kids, it was the same chorus. Failure, failure, failure. Only now, I had someone watching me absorb it. My daughter. That was the part that kept me up at night. Not my parents' cruelty. I was used to that. But the thought that she might grow up thinking this treatment was normal. That she'd believe, the way I once believed, that she was a burden. And if you've ever wondered why I snapped when I saw that pool selfie, when I saw them mocking her while she was in the hospital, this is why. Because it wasn't just a caption. It was a lifetime of cruelty, now directed at the only person who ever made me feel like I mattered. When the doctor finally came in, I thought my chest might cave in. Appendicitis, he said, flat as a hammer on steel, like he was telling me the time. Good news. It hadn't burst yet. Bad news. They had to operate immediately. And the worst part? I was alone in that room. Alone with my fear, alone with the silence from the people who should have been there. I wanted to text them. Just one line. She needs surgery. She could have died. But I stopped myself, because I already knew how it would play out. At best, my sister would send an eye roll in text form. At worst, they'd laugh about drama queen again. So I didn't call. And they didn't either. Not once. My daughter was being prepped for surgery, and they were still splashing in that damn pool. The operation went smoothly. The surgeon told me she'd recover fine, and I nearly collapsed myself. I sat there by her bed afterward, watching her breathe under the thin hospital blanket, thinking, this is what it means to actually show up for someone. And in the same breath, I thought, my parents never have. Not for me. Not for her. They'd toasted cocktails while I panicked in this chair. That's when it hit me. I had leverage. Real, legal leverage. The trust. The house. The one card my grandmother had pressed into my hand when she died, and I'd been too scared, too conditioned to ever play it. Not anymore. While my daughter slept, I called a lawyer. My voice was steady. Too steady, maybe. He took down the details, and by the time we left the hospital a few days later, the papers were ready. Formal notice. 30 days. I didn't sneak it into a drawer. I didn't send it through the post like a bill. No. I put it right on the kitchen table, dead center. Let it sit there like a live wire. And then I waited. The holiday stretched another week. Every day they posted more. Beaches, dinners, matching grins, family time. Every caption felt like it was aimed at me. At her. I stayed silent. For once, the silence was mine. And then the front door opened. Suitcases dragged across the floor. Laughter echoed. My parents walked in first, tan and smug, with my sister right behind them, her husband and kids trailing along. They froze when they saw me sitting at the table, the letter in front of me. The room went still. My mother reached for it first, scanned the lines, and went red. My father's jaw clenched like stone. My sister's face twisted like she'd swallowed something bitter. Then the screaming began. "This is our house!" my mother shouted, waving the paper. "She was confused when she wrote that will," my father barked. "You know she was old. She didn't know what she was doing." "You can't be serious!" my sister snapped, her voice climbing. "This is family. You don't kick family out." The cousins just stared, wide-eyed, like they'd stumbled into a play they didn't audition for. I didn't move. My friend sat beside me, sipping tea slowly, watching the circus unfold. My mother slammed the letter down again. "Ungrateful!" she spat. "After everything we've done for you, after raising you, you owe us this." I looked at her, calm as ice. "No, I don't. It's my daughter's house. You have 1 month." You'd think I had set the place on fire. My father turned purple. My sister started ranting about culture, tradition, respect. My mother wailed about betrayal. The cousins whispered drama queen again, as if that word could undo ink on paper. I stayed steady. I didn't shout. I didn't budge. "You have 1 month," I repeated. They threw everything at me, pleading, threats, guilt trips. My sister leaned across the table, furious. "Just take it back! Tear it up! You can't really mean this?" "If you care so much," I said, "let them live with you." And that shut her up cold. It went on for hours. Accusations, slammed doors, red faces, tears that looked rehearsed. My friend never left my side. Not once. At one point, my father leaned in, his voice low and venomous. "You'll regret this. You're still the same failure you've always been." I smiled, tired and sharp. "Maybe, but I'm the failure who just gave you 30 days to find a new place to live." That shut him down too. By the end of the night, the noise had burned itself out. My parents retreated to their room, muttering. My sister gathered up her kids and left, fuming. I went upstairs, tucked my daughter into her bed, kissed her forehead. She stirred, murmured my name, and I felt the weight shift. For the first time in years, the power was mine. They thought they owned this house. They thought they owned me. But the notice was on the table, the clock was ticking, and there was no undoing it. And I knew one thing as I turned out the light. They weren't going to take this quietly. Living with my parents after handing them an eviction notice was like sleeping with snakes in the bed and pretending you couldn't hear them hiss. The letter was on the table, the clock was ticking. But they still sat at the kitchen every morning, rattling mugs and slamming drawers as if noise could change the law. The atmosphere was poisonous. My father reading the paper with exaggerated sighs, my mother whispering ungrateful, just loud enough for me to hear. The air in that house had weight to it, pressing down on me and my daughter until even breathing felt like defiance. And my daughter, still sore from surgery, had to walk past their stairs on her way to the bathroom. 14 years old and recovering from appendicitis, but they looked at her like she'd ruined their lives. Then came the posts. I didn't see them first. My cousin sent me screenshots. My parents, smiling sadly beside staged boxes by the door. Caption: thrown out by our own daughter. Betrayed. Made homeless. Homeless. They were sitting in my kitchen when that went live. More posts followed. My father perched on the stairs looking tragic. My mother clutching a photo album like a widow in a soap opera. The captions wrote themselves, "We gave her everything. She gave us nothing." And the comments rolled in. Aunts, uncles, extended family all piling on. How could she? Shameful. Doesn't she know what family means? Family. Right. The same family that had called my kid a drama queen while she writhed in pain. I didn't answer. Not yet. Then my sister came. She didn't storm in this time. She knocked, but the look on her face was just as sharp. Sat down across from me like she was a lawyer and I was on trial. "You can't really mean this," she said. "You've made your point. Stop before it destroys everything." I stirred my tea. "Everything's already destroyed. You're tearing the family apart." I laughed. Dry, sharp. "No, I'm finally refusing to let them tear me apart." Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. Finally, she said, "You'll regret this." "Probably," I said. "But I'll regret staying a lot more." She left in a storm of perfume and indignation, and for once, I didn't feel small when the door slammed. Meanwhile, the posts kept multiplying. My parents had turned the house into a stage, performing victimhood for anyone who would watch. And it was working, at least until I decided to speak. I don't post much. I don't like it. But silence has its limits. I took their poolside selfie, the the one where they toasted, finally having peace without the pathetic drama queen, and I set it next to their homeless victim's photo. Then I wrote, "During this family holiday, my 14-year-old daughter collapsed and was rushed to the hospital. She was diagnosed with appendicitis. It could have been life-threatening. Not once did my parents or sister ask how she was. Not once did they visit. Instead, they posted this photo, mocking her as a drama queen. This house belongs to my daughter through my grandmother's will. I am her guardian. I will not allow people who laughed at her pain to keep living under her roof. That's the truth." And I hit post. The effect was immediate. The buzzing in my phone stopped. The comments dried up. The relatives who'd been shouting the loudest suddenly had nothing to say. The silence that followed wasn't heavy this time. It was clean. My parents didn't post again. The days dragged on, tense and bitter, but quieter. Cupboards still slammed, mutters still floated. But the performance was over. They knew it. By the end of the 30 days, they packed their things and left. No speeches, no posts, just boxes in a car and a door that closed behind them. I walked through the house after they were gone. The rooms felt strange without their noise, like the walls were exhaling for the first time. Upstairs, my daughter was stretched out on her bed, sketchbook in her lap. She looked up when I opened the door. "Are they really gone?" she asked. "Yeah," I said. "They're gone." She smiled, tired but genuine. "It feels different already." It did. For the first time, the house wasn't theirs. It wasn't even mine. It was hers. And it was finally free. After they moved out, they didn't exactly land on their feet. They hauled their boxes over to my sister's place, crammed themselves in with her husband, and my daughter's cousins. From what I've heard, it was chaos from day one. Too many people, not enough space, and her husband wasn't thrilled about suddenly inheriting his in-laws. It didn't take long before the cracks showed. Arguments, slammed doors, snide comments. A few months later, my sister finally had enough and kicked them out too. And with that, whatever was left of their relationship went down the drain. Now, word is they're renting some tiny, cheap place on the far edge of town. A far cry from the house they once thought was theirs. And me? With them gone, life changed overnight. The house is peaceful. My daughter has space to heal, to laugh, to just be a teenager without being mocked for it. I even started renting out one of the spare rooms, which meant I could cut back my hours at work and actually spend evenings with her. For the first time in years, we're not just surviving, we're living. I haven't spoken to the rest of them, and I don't plan to. I just hear the updates through relatives and the occasional social media post. So tell me, do you think I went too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more.